Hi, I'm Mustafa Mahmoud, and this is my demo for the IEpsilon kernel. This is a kernel that I made, a small Jupyter kernel prototype that I made for the Epsilon family of language in the Eclipse modeling framework. Epsilon is a family of language that Eclipse uses to do lots of things. The Eclipse modeling framework specifically uses to do lots of things. And this is a small prototype that I did for my GSOC contribution. So let's first ask Jupyter what languages it knows, what kernels it knows. So we can see that Jupyter knows about Epsilon here. If we then ask Jupyter to say make a notebook, and if we make a new notebook here, we can already see it sees Epsilon as a language, and then we can open it. Right now, the prototype only evaluates a UL code. UL is Epsilon base language, object language. Sorry, it's the base language for every other language in Epsilon package. So it only knows how to evaluate UL. UL is a language based on JavaScript. So we can do something like this. And right now it's already smarter than most Epsilon UL playgrounds here. So if you open a playground for UL on say Eclipse website or on Eclipse the IDE, it will complain about syntax error here because it must have a semicolon, a trailing semicolon. But in our prototype, it doesn't need that. We can just write an expression. But if you put a semicolon here, it also won't complain. Okay, it knows about syntax errors. So if you make two semicolons, which is a syntax error in UL, it will complain about the syntax error. The syntax errors here are really not the best thing in the world because UL parser is based on Antler, and Antler is a parser generator, so it doesn't really do good syntax errors. I might have better syntax errors in the future in this prototype, maybe using custom parsers or something, but this is something I might do in the future. Okay, so all of UL is available here. The prototype is smart enough to know when you print something, it doesn't need to print it again. So it's not just printing the result of the last expression blindly. It knows when you call println on an expression and it skips printing it. You can define operations, which UL equivalent of functions. Okay, you can define an operation called add 10, for example, which returns self plus 10. And then you can call this operation on say 1. And it will go. You can define variables. And then use these variables here. Okay, so let's have a look at the code. I'm mainly depending on two things. I'm depending on base kernel. Base kernel is a separate project by Spencer Park. Spencer Park is the same guy who made iJava, the Jupyter kernel for Java. So base kernel is just a small subset of iJava that knows how to communicate with Jupyter. It's a really basic kernel that knows only Jupyter communication protocol. It knows how to send to Jupyter things and how to receive things from it, but it doesn't know how to evaluate any code. So I'm depending on it here and I'm extending it. I'm just bringing it in and I'm extending it as Epsilon kernel. My Epsilon kernel here extends base kernel with the function that eval, which takes a string of EUL code, hopefully, and it displays it. Okay, so the second thing I'm depending on is EUL engine from Eclipse. Bring it as a dependency, and this is a model driver here. I'm not really using it at the moment, but I will use it in the future, of course. Okay, and eval here just takes the EUL code as a string and it parses it. If it's not valid EUL here, if parsing return is false, then it's not valid EUL. I will just try to add a semicolon at the end. I'm not really JavaScript interpreter, so I will not really have any sophisticated semicolon insertion rule. I will just add a single semicolon at the end and see if that makes it valid OL. If it's not, then just a syntax error, and I will print it as it is. If it's not, then if it's valid OL, I'm just will execute it. and if if the executed code did print anything, I will just return the printed things. If it did not print things but evaluated values, I will return the values here, and if it didn't do anything of this, I will just return an empty string. So this concludes our small demo. Thank you for listening.